Vladimir Putin will not lose this war. I state it that way as opposed to Ukraine can't win. Vladimir Putin will not lose. Losing to Vladimir Putin is existential to Vladimir Putin. Russia has 4 times the population. They have a much larger industrial base. Again, I said Russia can produce 4.5 million of those shells a year. We're not even up to 1 million a year. The average age of a Ukrainian soldier right now is 43 years old. And David, I heard you quote the Time magazine article. There are other quotes from some of Zelensky's top aides say that even if the U.S. and its allies come through with all the weapons they have pledged, quote, we don't have the men to use them, unquote. So the fact of the matter is, if you're worried about the people of Ukraine, you have to understand that probably about 100,000 of their soldiers have been killed, because there have been about 100,000 Russian conscripts. I take no joy in that. 40,000 civilians, hundreds of billions of dollars of Ukraine has been destroyed. The only way this war ends is in a settlement. And every day that the war goes on, more Ukrainians, more Russian conscripts die, more civilians die, more of Ukraine gets destroyed. They'll have to be built. So again, sending $60 billion as added fuel to the flames of a bloody stalemate makes no sense whatsoever. As evil a war criminal as Putin is, he's not going to lose this war. And our colleagues here just aren't willing to accept that reality, and they're living in a fantasy world, thinking that Ukraine can win this thing. They can't.
David, that's exactly right. I think that is an excellent summary of the situation. When I raised this point, people have, of course, accused me of being some sort of Putin apologist, when in fact my companies have probably done more to undermine Russia than anything. I mean, SpaceX has taken away 2/3 of the Russian launch business. The stuff has overwhelmingly helped Ukraine. It's such an absurd accusation. My concern is exactly what you articulated. If you have an extended war of attrition, every day that goes by, there are Ukrainian boys that are, and not even boys anymore because they're running out of boys. That you're losing, Ukraine's losing people every day. And if you're going to spend lives, it must be for a purpose, and not just a mile here, a mile there. In fact, a mile back and forth. The lines aren't moving. So just every day, people die. For what purpose? And as you said, there is no way in hell that Putin is going to lose. If he were to back off, he would be assassinated. And for those who want regime change in Russia, they should think about who is the person that could take out Putin. And is that person likely to be a peacenik? Probably not. They're probably going to be even more hardcore than Putin if they took him out. So, yeah.
Yes, I was just going to jump in with one point that leaves off where you landed there, which is, I think there's an issue with our framing here. I think most of us here, and it is too bad because I think I publicly called, and Elon did, and others did. I think JD tried to get somebody in here to articulate the best view of the other side. So hopefully for as long as we go, that offer remains open. But with that being said, I think that the framing, even here amongst those of us who agree on opposing this bill, is a little too charitable, actually, right? Because I think that if there's a good number of Democrats, good number of Republicans who are in favor of more funding to Ukraine, endless funding to Ukraine, but I think those who are generally against it point to what we think of as absence of what we will get from the added investment, right? That's the argument that goes, okay, the ROI is lower than the acceptable level of return for U.S. taxpayer dollars, and what are we getting in return for the money we're putting in? I actually think that's the wrong framing. I think it is actually net negative for the United States to continue funding this war, irrespective of the financial cost, for some of the reasons Elon just laid out. First of all, if you are shooting for regime change in Russia, which I do believe is the ideological goal here, the net result you're likely to get is actually one that is far worse than Putin, who's leading Russia. Play that out. And the second result, and the result that you're getting right now in real time. So regime change, absolutely. I know you're not supposed to say it out loud, but it's worth smoking out. That is the only ultimate stated goal of this project. So you're playing for an outcome that odds are is worse than the one you already have for the United States. But even worse is what you're seeing in the present is a daily strengthening of the military alliance between Russia and China, which when combined is the single greatest increase for the risk of World War III that we've seen in the post-World War II era, and is a risk that, by definition, then increases the risk of the continued existence of the United States should that world war actually, God forbid, transpire. And I'm not saying it's likely to happen. Any risk or any more than minuscule risk of that happening is an unacceptable risk. And we are actively increasing the risk of that worst case outcome, not just through the loss of financial dollars for ourselves, But irrespective of that financial cost, we are contributing to the increase of that risk versus a diplomatic resolution. So then the question is, and I know it's too bad we don't have somebody from the other side here, but we can ask the question of why. We could ask the same question. We could pretend this was a discussion about the border right now and have the same discussion about why do we have an open border on our southern border. And I think that there's a deliberateness to all of this, right? And if you miss, I think, the deliberate nature of this, nothing makes sense. But I think if you understand that, I think everything makes sense. The question of, David, right? Why are we contributing intentionally without accounting for known corruption? There's a certain deliberate goal here, just as there is with our own southern border right now, right? You could throw your hands in the air and ask, why is it that we are purposefully, or why is it that we're negligently allowing millions of people to cross our own southern border? That doesn't make sense unless you realize that's actually part of the objective. And I think the same thing goes for this Ukraine war. And I think that's why JD's finding in the last 24 hours is so interesting, is that one of the apparently deliberate elements here is that, and I don't think it's even the main one, but I think it's at least a feature that reflects a certain deliberate course of action, is that they're planting the seeds for what does seem to be the third impeachment of Donald Trump.